Sweet taste of going to Wembley. It's the first time we felt that for a while. This is my rational perspective on Chelsea 6. I think I've got that right. Lose count of the goals for once. 6, Middlesbrough 1. Chelsea comfortably and confidently heading to the Carabao Cup final next month against one of Fulham or Liverpool. A perfect night for Mauricio Pochettino, and it didn't start out that way. There were some rocky moments, but in the end, there can really be no complaints from a Chelsea fan perspective in terms of what we would have dreamed for. The fact that basically, even before halftime, it was quite evident the game was done, Middlesbrough were done, and Chelsea were pretty much able to stroll and coast for the whole of the second half, and even add a couple of goals on top to make the night even more enjoyable. And given where Chelsea were before a ball was kicked, given how we all felt following the first leg defeat, the trepidation and the caution about coming up against a very defensive team, a low block at Stamford Bridge, you can throw in all the caveats, which I don't think are irrelevant. I think we saw it tonight that Middlesbrough are a mid-table to lower mid-table championship team, and Chelsea should be beating them comfortably. But there still is a lot of pressure on young shoulders to go out there and perform and to come back and to put in that accomplished a performance, which, this isn't. It was the performance tonight of a Chelsea team that are a lot better than they actually are. I think that's the one thing I would say. I don't think anyone would have been surprised if the Chelsea team of like 5 years ago, a Chelsea team challenging for a Premier League title, had put in that type of performance against a team like Middlesbrough. And when you actually frame it like that, I think that's where most credit comes in. That in the end, Chelsea looked far more mature and accomplished than they have for a lot of this season, and especially in the first leg. And it comes down to quality. It comes down to that psychological difference, as I spoke about in my pre-match show, where we looked at the team, we looked at what tactically Middlesbrough were going to do. You didn't have to be a tactical or strategic genius to understand or to grasp what Michael Carrick's team were going to do when they got to the bridge. But I did say that if Chelsea scored within the first 20 minutes, I know some people said one wouldn't change much, but I actually think one did change everything, because Chelsea in the first 10 minutes of the game were pretty bad. I mean, some of the passing was atrocious. The lapses in concentration we saw in periods throughout that early moments of the game did give me massive concern. Some of the sloppy passes and even opportunities that Middlesbrough had themselves to potentially get forward and break and maybe score another goal on top of that. It was a lot of alarm bells in that opening period. But literally, the moment Chelsea carved them open with the first goal, I mean, it was basically game over. I mean, it was like the moment that level of quality was introduced, and surprisingly, finally, Raheem Sterling discovering that you can actually play to one of your teammates who's open in front of goal. And although, yes, Broja tried to make a meal of it, we did score, and it wasn't another Raheem Sterling one-on-one with an easy tap-in that he screws up. He has at least learnt something, and we were off to the races. And from there, really, again, it was just another brilliant combination play, I thought, down that right wing with Axel Disasi very much bombing down that flank, and just a combination play again. Raheem Sterling involved, nice cutback. Broja again involved himself. Whether he meant to hit it a goal, it didn't really matter. And there is Enzo Fernandez making a late run into the Stamford Bridge shed-end penalty box as a number 8. That goal was very reminiscent of a goal we would have seen about a decade ago at Stamford Bridge. And from there, I think it was quite evident that Middlesbrough heads completely dropped, because I believe it was Rodgers who eventually scored very late on, who had a chance shortly after Chelsea scored the first, that Petrovic got down and saved well from a set piece. But other than that, there was very little for Middlesbrough to offer. And soon after that, I think, I've heard some analysis already that is like it was all Middlesbrough's own doing. But actually, those individual mistakes and that self-inflicted calamity and collapse that came later in the game, Chelsea, to get to a position where that started happening, was down to individual quality and Chelsea showing their quality at Stamford Bridge. So I don't really just think it's about Middlesbrough self-imploded and that's the whole analysis you make of the game. Chelsea still had to put themselves in that commanding position. And I thought it was just nice that Axel Disasi, as a right-back, we didn't have Malo Gusto making the overlapping runs. And it shows you the difference. We saw it tonight as well with Ben Chilwell. It was wonderful to see Chilwell at left back, some of the diagonal runs. He could have had a penalty early on. Just making those diagonal runs consistently, just how much of a threat and how much of a difference it makes to an opposing team when they have to answer those questions. And yes, again, I can hear people screaming or maybe even thinking, Dan, it's Middlesbrough. Of course it is. It's, you know, it's not Liverpool. But those basics, I think, still impact a majority of games. And unfortunately, we haven't seen it enough because there haven't been natural fullbacks. And it was lovely that Axel Disasi himself was getting a nosebleed, no fear, storming forward and then scoring the third goal. Really nice moment for him personally. I believe that's his first goal since the opening game of the season against Liverpool. And then from there, of course, Cole Palmer, very similar opportunity he has right at the end of the half that we had in the first leg that he put wide. This time, no mistake, rolls it into the bottom corner. And we go into the break in such a commanding position and, you know, feeling so confident. And from there, really, it's just about running down the clock and hopefully making some subs to rotate and rest because, of course, it's very intense for Chelsea in the next week or so, even under that, because we've got the game against Villa on Friday night and then got the game against Liverpool on deadline day, or at least the 31st of January. So it's going to be an intense one. And that would be one of only two negatives for me tonight is a player performance. And the second one is just subs. I mean, I didn't quite understand why Cole Palmer played the entirety of that game. Yes, he did score another goal, but I'm not quite sure it benefits us to risk effectively draining Cole Palmer, our most important player at the moment, our most clinical player at the moment, who produces on a regular basis. So you want him starting in the next two games. So I didn't quite get that. And I thought some of the other subs were a little bit strange to me. That doesn't mean to say the players coming on were all weird. I mean, Madueke, I expected to come on. It was nice to see him come on and score and make an impact. That's another player who's taken his opportunity. Leo Castledine and Alfie Gilchrist, especially more for Leo Castledine to get himself on the Chelsea pitch as a senior player and to get himself ingratiated with life at Stamford Bridge. For me, it felt to me like we could have seen more of him. Like there was very little risk for Chelsea at half time. And it was very clear and evident even as the second half progressed. It was just about Chelsea trying to maybe score a couple more. And even though Rodgers did score a brilliant individual goal himself very late on, Middlesbrough weren't doing anything in that game. The game was effectively dead. So it was, again, the argument that's been made about Malo Gusto of overplaying him. You know, if in a couple games' time, some of these players that have been pushed a little bit to the limit tonight break down, again, I think eyes are going to go towards Pochettino. The second negative is unfortunately a player that I just thought had an atrocious evening and was taken off on Noni Madueke at half-time, and that was Mykhailo Mudryk. And, you know, I tweeted this out, and this sounds very brutal, but given a lot of the discourse I see about academy players in particular, of how little patience we should give them, you know, I don't think I'm being harsh to expect more of a player who did come in for a bigger investment and, you know, has been playing at Chelsea for a little bit now. He signed 12 months ago. And I just thought for Mudryk, it was a really, really bad display individually. It was not the fact that maybe he was just lacking in confidence, or maybe his execution was a little bit off, which you could maybe look at other players across the team. It was just an atrocious performance. It was the performance of a player who looked like they have played no senior football, not enough senior football. And again, I asked the question to people who are quick to dismiss Armando Broja, who are quick to dismiss even players. I mean, Conor Gallagher has not even got close to a performance like that Mykhailo Mudryk had. And people calling for him to start, he starts tonight, he puts in a dreadful display. And I don't think you can have any complaints moving forward. It's just the basics. It's the ball out your feet, first touch, decision-making, knowing when to make movements. I think that down the left, you see Ben Chilwell making those runs and how impactful he is, and the opportunity for Mudryk to capitalise on that as a winger, and I just don't think he did. I think he was atrocious, and I don't think he can have any complaints for going off at half-time, and maybe Pochettino making a bit of a statement there. because I think it needed to be made, because the levels of performance are just unacceptable. And I'm not sitting here and saying that Mudryk meant to be that bad. Of course not. But again, if we're talking about players who need patience, if we're talking about players who we should give endless opportunities to and are not producing end products, I think there's a balance between understanding a player is raw and young and needs time to develop, but then also just not providing anything. There's a difference there, and unfortunately Mudryk was not doing enough for me to justify him getting that patience for extended periods of time. But other than that, listen, Chelsea at Wembley. If you're complaining about Chelsea winning a game 6-1, I think football probably isn't the sport for you. And Chelsea at Stamford Bridge are on a nice little run now. I mean, we haven't lost at Stamford Bridge. What, do we have to go back to Brentford in October, I believe it was, for the last really, really bad display at Stamford Bridge? I may have missed one out there, but it's becoming a ground again that players look a little bit more confident and comfortable playing in, which was a big problem. I believe tonight we've also now scored, we've surpassed our goal tally for last season, 51, I believe it was, or 53 we've now scored this season. I think it was like 49 for the entirety of last season. So again, those comparisons to last season are maybe a little bit overblown in terms of how bad it is this year compared to last year. I mean, in some ways, there are similarities, but in other ways, in terms of player performances, in terms of actual output, in terms of, players at least looking like they're going in some sort of direction, I think it's incomparable to last year. I really do. So Pochettino, like he did with Spurs in his first season, he got them to a Carabao Cup final. And funny enough, he beat a championship side in the semi-final to get there. Now, that year in 2015, he met Chelsea, Jose Mourinho's Chelsea, who were in a title chase themselves and lost the game. Obviously, that was an amazing day to be there. Now, this time he's likely, unless Fulham do us a massive favour, are going to be facing a title-chasing team in Liverpool. And I think, I expect that Chelsea will lift their game. It's a final. You've just got to be in that moment to that's the thing. We had to get there because of the draw. We have got there. And now it's whether Pochettino, who has in times in his career not been able to get over the line in these moments, can he do it next month? But that's a question for next month. Let's just enjoy, celebrate, relax. Not too much, because of course we have to think about the FA Cup game, but it's a good night to be a Chelsea fan. We can rewatch it, enjoy it. We're going to Wembley. Que sera, sera. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this show. If you're a Chelsea fan and you want more carefree content, please do hit that subscribe button. Really helps the channel out, as well as the like button and sharing it around with friends so more people can get involved in the community. And you can follow Son of Chelsea across socials at Son of Chelsea on TikTok, on Instagram and on X. Thank you.